partisanship sometimes matters. There are also shared principles, that help maintain this remarkable democracy and make us one people under the rule of law. It's a kind of miracle when you sit there and see all those people in front of you, people that are so different in what they think, and yet they've decided to help solve their major differences under law. And when the students get too cynical, I say, go look at what happens in countries that don't do that. And that's there. I can't take this around in my job. People have come to accept this Constitution, and they've come to accept the importance of a rule of law.
That was former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer on the importance of the rule of law. Justice Breyer, who was nominated to the court by President Clinton in 1994, served on the bench for 28 years before stepping down in 2022. He is out now with a new book entitled Reading the Constitution: Why I Chose Pragmatism, Not Textualism. And the former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer joins us now right here on Morning Joe. It's good to have you, sir.
Justice Breyer, thank you so much for being here. Tell us why this book is so important at this moment in U.S. history.
I think it's important because many Americans are discussing the court. Some approve it, many do not approve what it's been doing recently, and then they have reasons as to why they think it's doing what they don't like. One of them is they think it's politics, and I don't think it is. I think it plays a very minor role in politics, at least politics as it's ordinarily understood. Others think that they just like to do this way or that way, and that's not a very good explanation. Now, in 40 years on the bench, which I've had 28 on the Supreme Court, I've gotten more or less used to the basic job, which is to take words in a statute or the Constitution, words typically that don't explain themselves, and decide how they apply in the case or what they mean. Now, I think the thing that has changed over the last decade, over the last few years, is a method of deciding that has become very popular, and that's called textualism. And it's so attractive. It says all you do is read the words. Just read the words and do what they say. And this will be simple, clear, and it will stop judges from deciding what they think is good instead of the law. All right? Many believe that. I do not. And there is another more traditional way of looking at those words, and that is someone wrote them. What was their purpose? What are their consequences? How do they fit within the values that underlie this document? I still have it, the Constitution of the United States. And will they last, these interpretations, to the point where they make the lives of people in the United States better? That's what I call pragmatism, but it's much more complex than that. And so I want to explain to people what I've seen, not as a professor, not as a theory. Those professors do know those theories, but I've had some experience that they've not had. And that's the experience I want to write from. I want to tell you about this case, that case, the other case, and why that fits into a pattern, and why I think, rather than just blaming politics, lawyers and non-lawyers, people in the United States and others, should wake up, in my view, to what's going on with what sounds awfully academic, and it isn't, because it determines how those cases will come out and affect men and women in America.
You know, it's such an extraordinarily important book right now, especially, as you said, for people, for Americans that look at court decisions, say, well, it's just political. You know, you can look at the makeup of any court. You can look at, I'm not shocked by Dobbs because of what Clarence Thomas, because of what Kavanaugh, because of Justice Kavanaugh, what they've said throughout most of their lives. And I think it brings up an important point. If we're going to have this debate and understand what really moves it. Yes, sometimes politics enters into the hearts and the minds of men, and they try to but this is the battle to win, isn't it? This is
Yes.
it is the intellectual battle that has to be won.
It is a battle to win. And I think that it's not that the judges you name or other judges are just sitting there thinking, oh, well, I have a different point of view. If we're interested, in my opinion, of not running the risk of certain dangers to the republic that the founders set up, we don't want to run those risks. And therefore, I think the path, which not too many people outside the judiciary will see, but I see it, and I want to explain it. The path called textualism is something that should be avoided. Simple? Simple? I'll tell you something. I just read an opinion. Where it was 63 pages long, sent 30 pages each side, and you know what it was about? It was about what the word "and" meant. Yeah. And there are others like that. And if you think they're simple, if you think the cases in the Supreme Court in the language are simple, so you can just go read them and see what they mean, I have a bridge in New York to sell you.
Justice, you're arguing for pragmatism in law and in reading of the law. And on the court, you were surrounded by a lot of justices who were strong originalists. How did you balance your beliefs and their beliefs? And what is the right balance between textualism and pragmatism?
It's a very good question, because it is a question that Justice Nino Scalia, who was a good friend of mine, and I would debate. And we would debate it usually before students. We went to Lubbock, Texas. I think there were about 1,000 students there. I was amazed. They must have thought it was a basketball game. But and we spoke about it. And because he very much is a textualist, has written that we should just follow the words basically and no more. And I would say to him, you know, life changes. And the values that are in the Constitution, they have to be adopted. So I said, you know, he's a very intelligent and very funny and amusing guy. So I said, George Washington didn't know about the internet. And he said, I knew that. He said, but the problem between your system, it's like the two campers. I said, who are the two campers? And he said, one sees the other putting on some running shoes. Why? There's a bear in the camp. A bear in the camp. You can't outrun a bear. Yes, he says, but I can outrun you. And that's what Scalia says. He says, Stephen, you have a system, and you draw on a system because this system has been around since John Marshall, since the founders. I didn't make it up. But he says, it's too complicated. You're the only one who can work it. And I say, Nino, I don't think that's so. But if it were so, you have a system that will produce a constitution and a set of laws that no one will want.
Justice Breyer, as you know, this country is on the edge of something historic happening in the court. And a lot of people don't pay attention to the court every day, but a lot of people of influence certainly do. And there's an element called pace of play that I would use that phrase to describe what might be going on here at the court. We had Nixon and the Watergate papers. We've had Bush-Gore. Those decisions came down from the court fairly rapidly in terms of the court's usual pace. But now the court seems to be slowing down things, and slowing down things. Is there any rational explanation for the amount of time being taken to make these decisions?
Well, I don't have that experience that you described. I mean, in the 28 years, it's much more mechanical in the sense of taking cases or not than you have just described. My experience is when a case is ready, it comes there. Why do we take a case? We take a case because normally different judges, lower court judges, in different places have come to different conclusions about the same question of federal law. I can give you an example of a federal question that could be, do you want an example?
Yeah.
Okay. This is not, I won't give it an American example. I'll give a French example because I read it in a French newspaper. Okay? And I'm teaching to the 5th grade, and I say, look at this example. What? A biology professor is traveling from Nantes to Paris to meet his class with a basket, and in that basket are 20 live snails. The conductor comes up, what's in the basket? He shows him. Do you have a ticket for the snails? He says, I need a ticket for the snails? That's ridiculous. He says, read the fare book. It says no animals on the train except in a basket, and if so, half fare. This is not applying to cats. That's dogs, maybe a rabbit. Certainly not a snail. You think a mosquito? Well, that's ridiculous. He says, is a snail an animal? Aha. Mm-hmm. And I put to the 5th grade class, what do you think? Do they have to pay the fare or do they not have to pay the fare? And before you know it, they are fighting with each other like mad. What about a scorpion? What about, is it an animal? Okay. Now I say, you understand the job of the appellate judge. It might not be a snail. It might be bare arms. But that's the job. And the question is how you carry it out. And when mechanically the rules of procedure, when that case is before us and we decide to take it, 4 votes will take it. They then start to write briefs. Who? The parties, the government, the friends of this party, the friends of that party. And they're all called briefs. They're little documents. Do you know why they're called briefs?
Because they're not.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. They're the least brief thing I've ever seen. All right, but we read them. And then we have an oral argument. Then we go into the conference. We discuss it. Nobody else is there. And people say what they think. And don't say, as you've learned, I have a better argument than you. That will get you nowhere. Listen. That's what Senator Kennedy told me and the other staff members when I worked there in the Senate. Listen to what people who disagree with you say. And when you listen and discuss, you sometimes find agreement. Some agreement. We can work with that. And we'll work with it and try to come closer to an agreement or compromise. And then we go out, and the chief assigns, and we write an opinion, and we circulate it when it's ready, and people can add, if they want, concurrences, dissents, and finally everyone's exhausted or written, and they're finished, and the opinion comes out. That's it. And there isn't mucking around with dates. Very little, very little. You can never say never about anything, but very, very little. It proceeds in the mechanical way.